right, welcome everybody. We're excited to be with you this morning. We're really excited about this product. Thanks for joining us for this webinar about US rooftop geocoding from SmartyStreets. It's certainly a project that we have been looking forward to releasing, and I know there's a lot of excitement. We've got a lot of attendees actually today, so we know that there's excitement out there for this new product, and we're glad to be able to share some more details with you about this. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to learning a little bit more. So let's get started. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Wes Arnold, and I'm a marketing manager here at SmartyStreets. And with me is Burke Charlton, and Burke is the director of geolocation intelligence. And Burke comes to us. We're excited to have Burke, because actually Burke and I are both relatively new additions to the company, and I don't know if you guys know this, but SmartyStreets is growing quite rapidly, and I think that's because people are discovering us for our speed, our reliability, our awesome support team, and with that growth, more people are being hired, and Burke and I are actually benefactors of that. But Burke specifically comes to us with over 25 years of geocoding experience. We're really grateful to have him. And in the past, he's managed the largest geocoding product portfolio in the world. And he's worked extensively with P&C insurance companies, telecom providers, and logistics companies. So he's got an extensive background on geocoding and geolocation intelligence. So we're really grateful to have him with us. Let's go over what we're going to talk about today. So some of the topics we're going to discuss are just an introduction to rooftop geocoding, some definitions, a little bit of geocoding in the past, and a rooftop, what rooftop meant in the past versus today. We'll talk about specifically the SmartyStreets rooftop geocoder and reverse geocoding. And Burke's got some visual examples of how those will benefit you guys in your industries. And we'll talk about the release schedule, the plans for the future. And then at the end, we'll have a short Q&A session that you guys can address your questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and submit them over the questions feature on GoToWebinar. And what we'll do is we'll just, at the end, we'll address those questions as they come up. So now I'm just going to turn the time over to Burke, who's the subject matter expert. So I'll turn the time over to you, Burke.
Thanks a lot, Wes. I'd like to start off with an interesting anecdote about geocoding historically, and it seems very relevant given the current environment with diseases and epidemiology. And I expect that most of you are probably working from home, as many of us are. And so let me just talk about something that happened in 1854. There was a big cholera outbreak. Dozens of people were dying from a cholera incident, and one of the first epidemiologists in history, a man named John Snow, decided to take all of these deaths that were happening, and he mapped them out on the streets of London. His original map is shown on the lower left. It's really, he's mapped out the deaths that happened as histograms so that you can see how many deaths happened in a certain spot, and he was able to trace a lot of them to what they call the Broad Street water pump. And even though people were living elsewhere, the Broad Street water pump was popular because the people thought the water tasted better. But what had happened was that some cholera had gotten dumped into the water that fed into that pump, or actually was, I think it was what amounted to some dirty diapers of some sick children that got dumped into the water supply. And he was able to identify that water pump, shut it down. There's a modern adaptation as a map over on the right-hand side here that shows where those deaths occurred, and also the water pump that he mapped out has been memorialized. If you go there on Broad Street, you can see that water pump there with a plaque that shows why it's important. It's sort of a landmark for modern geographic analysts. They like to go there and have a look at that. So modern epidemiologists continue to use geocoding to monitor and measure incidents and outbreaks of disease, and I know they've been very active lately trying to track down COVID-19 cases, where they're coming from, and get as accurate as they can, even at the building level when they can. So I think they're kind of modern day geographic heroes. Let's go over some definitions real quick. Geocoding, sometimes called forward geocoding, typically means just appending a latitude and longitude to a location like an address. So our address here at SmartyStreets is 2335 South State Street, Provo, Utah, with specific latitude. And when that gets geocoded, in this case, it puts it right on top of the building. And in address geocoding, the address is typically cleansed and normalized and validated. And everything else being equal, the better the quality of the address validation, the better the geocoding. And that has been true since geocoding started. You've really got to clean the addresses, and that's why the marriage of geocoding with SmartyStreets is so powerful. SmartyStreets is a top-notch address cleansing and validation engine, and combine that with good geographic data, and you really have a great combination. Once you've geocoded an address, then there's a huge amount of geographic data that can be added to the address. I think of it as like latent energy. All of this new data that no one knew was there, all this new information about an address then can be unlocked when geocode happens. Reverse geocoding is really just the exact opposite of geocoding. And it seems to be very relevant today. We've got billions of devices, literally billions, that are churning out location information, usually as latitudes and longitudes. These lat longs are delivered to app providers and cell phone service providers and navigation systems and other connected devices. Typically starting with a lat long, reverse geocoding then converts the lat long coordinates to street addresses or maybe named locations. An example here is this lat long and the address that it identified with that. So definitionally, then let's just talk about the geocoding process. When an address is geocoded, typically it gets standardized and normalized. That includes things like parsing it to be able to identify the street types and the street name and the street suffixes. Then the address is cleansed to make sure that everything looks normal. The street suffixes and the street names and everything like that, and the city names are all cleansed to match something that's real. And then it gets verified and validated. In the United States, we do that according to United States Postal Service rules. And then it gets matched to street data and the point data and local geography. The better that data is, that street data and point data and local geography, the more accurate the geocode will be. And then after that, detailed and address and location codes can be returned for additional decision making. So, and here's hopefully for most of you a recognizable address. Let's talk about false positives real quick. Let's talk about false positives. And I'm going to talk about why most geographic analysts hate false positives and how we avoid them as SmartyStreets. A false positive geocode occurs when the address is confirmed, but it matched badly or is in the wrong location. In general, at least in the companies that I work with in the past for geocoding applications, a non-match is greatly preferred over a false positive match because false positive matches lead to bad business decisions and costly mistakes. For example, in the case of a logistics company, a false positive match will send a truck to the wrong location. And that can cost anywhere from $50 to $200 per incident, depending on how far out of the way they have to go. So these are very costly, so businesses would much prefer to do a manual intervention on a non-match. I've got an example I'm going to show you here in a second. The false positives are greatly reduced if you have high quality address cleansing on the way in and need to be validated, such as putting SmartyStreets in front of a geocoding engine. That will greatly reduce the incidences of false positive matches. And because the SmartyStreets US Rooftop Geocoder is 100% integrated with the SmartyStreets address validation API, that results in highly accurate and valid results. I'm going to give you an example of something here. I hate to pick on Google, but they're big and they can take it, and I love them anyway. But this is an example of a false positive match that happened to me a couple days ago. I was trying to ascertain the amount of alternate street name addresses that exist in our area. We're on our street name that we're on here is called State Street, but it's also US Highway 89. So I was curious to see how Google would handle that as an alternative street name match. So I typed in 2335 South US 89 in Provo, Utah. And Google Maps returned clearly a false positive, 2335 US 89 in Harrisville, Utah, which is 90 miles away from where I was trying to get a match. I would much prefer to say we don't know where that is. We can't verify it. SmartyStreets returns unknown address for that same address. Google didn't tell me they didn't know it. They put it 90 miles away. And this, I guess in the worst case scenario, this would have resulted in someone going really to the wrong address by typing that in. So that is a false positive match where good quality address validation and address quality will result in a non-match in this case. Why do we geocode? And by the way, nobody memorizes their latitude and longitude values. I've been doing this 25 years. I love geocoding. I have never memorized my lat long values because it's not relevant to me. It's just a number. But I do know what is near or what is close to or what that address is inside or what's the risk or the value or the danger of a particular address because of that location. And that's really why people are geocoding is to be able to get to an answer regarding a geographic location. Like I said earlier, addresses have a lot of latent energy that is unlocked by geocoding it accurately, whether that's what franchise area is this address in, what's the difference between this location and a number of stores, which one's closest, or distance to a line, in this case, like a coastline. These are all the things that people who geocode and organizations that geocode are trying to answer questions such as these. The more accurate the geocode, the more accurate the answer is. And with that, I've just got a chart here that I've used for some time, which just explains the different accuracy levels of different types of geocoding and what types of decisions would be dependent on that. So for example, with rooftop geocoding, things like risk exposure or 5G coverage in telecommunications, mobile marketing apps, what they used to call location-based services, routing applications, mapping to aerial imagery or real estate technology. These are all applications that really benefit a lot from rooftop geocoding. There's others where Parcel Centroid matching, and we're going to define some of these and give you examples later on. But Parcel Centroid geocoding could be just fine for doing things like tax determination or a utility company call before you dig. They just need to know what parcel to go to be able to identify where that site might be. Franchise determination or epidemiology is usually good with Parcel Centroid. Interpolated, where you're estimating where it is along a street segment. Territory assignment for insurance companies, that's usually good for that. Target marketing and retail trade area analysis, site selection, and then down to ZIP4, where demographic analysis and consumer segmentation and sales territory definition, these are all possible with these different levels. Now geocoding applications typically cascade, and in the industry we call this cascading, from the most accurate level to the least accurate. So the SmartyStreets rooftop geocoder positions a high majority of geocodes at the true rooftop level, and then addresses not find at the rooftop level then will cascade down most of the rest of Parcel Centroid or some to an address level and the rest at ZIP4. So that's how the geocoding technology cascades and how it works. When we say rooftop geocoding, we're referring to an expression that's actually been around a long time. I've been doing this long enough that I've seen the expression rooftop geocoding being used for a variety of different ways. I remember back in the 90s, ZIP4 geocoding, when it first came out, was actually referred to by those that pioneered that level of geocoding. That was called rooftop geocoding. Well, not for long, and then street interpolated geocoding along the street address, then that was called rooftop geocoding. And then finally, Parcel Centroid Geocoding was called Rooftop Geocoding, and that was almost correct. I was involved in pioneering some of the early Parcel Centroid Geocoding applications. And yes, in fact, a lot of addresses did land on a rooftop, but it was really more coincidental. It wasn't by design, just because a lot of people tend to build houses, for example, in the middle of a property. However, when SmartyStreets says rooftop geocoding, we mean that the placement of an address deliberately includes a geographic coordinate that shows up somewhere on the rooftop of a building. It's not by accident. We are taking a combination of data elements like building footprint data, and we're deliberately putting building locations, coordinates on rooftops of buildings. And that's what we mean. And the new SmartyStreets rooftop geocoder will place a high majority of geocoded addresses right on the rooftop of the correct building. I'm going to give you an example here of a Parcel Centroid versus a rooftop geocode. The sample address, yes, we tend to use a lot of addresses in our backyard because they're easily researched, but this sample address is in Salem, Utah, 1142 West, 1500 North. Now, some geocode vendors call this a rooftop match, but it's really a parcel match. So there is the center of the parcel. You can see the turquoise line of the parcel boundary, and a Parcel Centroid match clearly puts it right in the middle of the parcel. They're calling Parcel Centroid matches rooftop matches. But you can clearly see here that it's not a rooftop match. The new SmartyStreets US Rooftop Geocoder gives this result down at on top of where you can see the house. This is true rooftop geocoding, and this is what we're talking about for rooftop geocoding. So Parcel Centroid matches literally puts the address of that parcel, the location of that address right in the middle of the parcel, called the centroid. Let's talk about what we mean by address interpolation. Address interpolation means addresses that are geocoded using street level address ranges. It was pioneered by the US Census Bureau in the mid 90s. It's generally considered to be more accurate than zip-4 geocoding. And the street level address data has information like street name and address ranges. Interpolation approximates the location of that address based on the length of the segment and the address range. So for example, in this case, 49 Main Street is about halfway along the address range of 1 to 99, and it interpolates it about halfway along that address segment. This works fairly well. Unfortunately, addresses actually get clumped together on one side of the street or the other, or one end of the street or the other. And so sometimes it can be hundreds of feet away. But it's generally considered better than zip-4, but not as good as Parcel. And certainly not as good as building footprint or building rooftop. Some applications require very high confidence in location accuracy. And PNC Insurance is one of those applications where an accurate measurement of the distance to coast from a property to a coastline is very, very important. And I've heard insurance underwriters say a lot, there's really no such thing as a badly written policy. It's just, or a policy they won't write. It's really how much they're going to charge for that. And I would imagine that this house that's closest to us in the foreground there is going to be fairly expensive to insure based on their close proximity to an exposed coastline. 5G coverage is another application that requires building-specific accuracy to determine coverage. Telco providers typically will pre-qualify coverage strength by geocoding an address and then matching that against coverage polygons. Maybe some of you have said, well, I wonder what my coverage is going to be if I subscribe to AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile or Verizon. You type in an address. What they do is they geocode that, and then they match that against the signal strength of that area. 5G coverage is really interesting because it's frequently building specific, as illustrated in the map below. Those are specific building locations, and 5G coverage is really more like aiming a rifle at a building. It's so specific that they really need to be quite accurate in terms of how that coverage is going to work. So some applications in telco, including 5G, really do require building rooftop accuracy. The SmartyStreets US Rooftop Geocoder will offer unparalleled accuracy, speed, and pricing. So the geocoding from SmartyStreets will have precise nationwide geocoding available with, as I've stated before, most of those geocodes will have accuracy at the building level. And many geocodes, in fact, will have accuracy at the sub-building level. So if you notice that some of the multi-unit complexes in the lower right part of the screen there's multiple addresses on each one of those buildings. That's called a sub-building accuracy level geocode. And there's millions upon millions of those. Not all of them will have that level of accuracy. Some will be clumped together in the middle of a structure, but there are many, many that will be accurate to the sub-building level. The superior accuracy that you'll see when you start geocoding at this type of rooftop level geocoding will be very obvious and should be suitable for applications demanding the highest levels of accuracy. The SmartyStreets geocoding data is sourced from thousands of municipal, county, and state data sets. It's then blended with building footprint data, street data, and parcel data, and all blended together to make sure that all this data can be the most precisely located as possible. And then it's tightly integrated with the SmartyStreets address validation. What makes us special? Well, and why did I end up coming to SmartyStreets is another question. I'm very, very excited about the opportunity that we have here. It is the highest available accuracy for true US rooftop geocoding. It's 100% cloud-based. Those of you who are SmartyStreets customers know that the advantages of cloud-based infrastructure. End users don't need to bear the cost and time of updating huge reference data sets and making sure that everything stays updated and coordinated and synced together. That's something that SmartyStreets does for you. All of the hardware and the data updates and technical issues are completely handled by SmartyStreets. SmartyStreets has world-class customer support from our support team. When you call, chat, or email, we will answer your questions quickly, usually right away. There's a wide range of lookup volume options, including unlimited volumes, which I have to tell you is rare in the cloud-based industry. Most really never stop charging you no matter how many you geocode. We have a number of unlimited volume options. On top of that, we have high processing speeds, including options for over 50 million records an hour. If that is what you need, we can provide the volume that you need and what you're looking for completely in the cloud. The SmartyStreets geocoding is very tightly integrated with SmartyStreets address API, which means that you'll have high match rates, low false positives, and a wide range of easily integrated APIs, which many of you have been using for a long time. So it really shouldn't be a lot of extra work or any extra work to start using the geocoding API. It's completely integrated into existing processes that are already in place. Just a couple of examples real quick. I'm going to keep picking on Google just because, like I said, they're big and they can take it. None of us are going to stop using it for a variety of things, but the geocoding makes it easy to compare. And they're pretty good. I love Google. They're pretty good. I'm just offering you options now that are better than what geocoding from Google is able to offer. So this is an accuracy example here. It's a sub-building geocoding in a strip mall. The Google geocoding is the blue dot right there in the building. Any address that you type in that building would show up on that blue dot. And good for them, they did put on the building, it's just not spread out. The red dot is Parcel Centroid from other vendors. That's where they put it. But the SmartyStreets addresses are the green stars across the building. So here's just an example of a street view image of that, and the white lines there show how it's the view that we're looking at on the building. You can see that there are in fact a lot of retailers spread all on that building, and it looks very credible where the SmartyStreets locations are. Another geocoding accuracy example, and here we're using building footprint polygons to illustrate where the structures are. This is in a mobile home community in the Midwest, and you can see that the building centroids are in fact on top of most or all of the mobile homes that are existing in that community. The pink dots are SmartyStreets and the green triangles represent Parcel Centroids in that area. So you can see in the bottom there, we've got another, looks like a strip mall. We have all the mobile homes spread out with actual addresses located correctly on on the building footprints. And another example, this is a rural address geocoding. Again, you can see we've got the building footprints there located on the imagery where the buildings are. This is rural address geocoding. The pink dot at the center of the parcel is Google. The turquoise dot is SmartyStreets, and the pink lines are the parcel and property boundaries. So here you can see that again, SmartyStreets is putting the address correctly on the building, and Parcel Centroid misses the mark by hundreds of feet in these cases, in one case putting it in the middle of a pond. I'd like to give you a reverse geocoding use case. Most of you probably remember Hurricane Katrina, unless you're very young. After Hurricane Katrina, many of the homes in Gulfport, Mississippi, and other communities nearby that were stricken by this were literally washed away. And P&C claims agents were initially unable to identify specific properties on the ground. I was working in geocoding this time, and I remember working with some of these companies to implement a reverse geocoding solution using mobile devices. That the mobile devices provided the lat longs, and then reverse geocoding was able to accurately identify many hundreds of these properties that were washed away without any street signs or house numbers by being on the property, getting a reverse geocode, and then locating the property where it was located. For those of you who are current customers or prospective customers, how do you use the SmartyStreets geocoder? Well, we hope it's going to be pretty simple. The SmartyStreets Rooftop Geocoder and Reverse Geocoder are very tightly integrated with the Street Address API. You can use upgraded authorization and token keys. They will unlock the Rooftop Geocoder and Reverse Geocoder. It's really just as simple as putting in those new auth and token keys. And one thing important to remember, you're currently getting ZIP+4 geocoding with the SmartyStreets application. That will continue. You don't need to worry about that. The ZIP4 geocoding is something that's already been provided. That'll continue to be a part of it. It's just that the new Rooftop Geocoder is an additional product to that. The command line interface, the SmartyList.exe, is fully supported for batch processing, and all the current SDKs on the .NET, C# and etc. and Go and iOS, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, Ruby, all fully supported in the new, in the same way as it always has been. You just need to use the new keys and a new authorization license, and it will continue to work the way it has been. What's our release schedule? We are targeting the early September, maybe as soon as the 1st, but I don't want to commit my engineering team to something that will put additional pressure on it. It will definitely be early September 2020. The Rooftop Geocoder and Reverse Geocoder are currently in beta testing stage with very good results. The Rooftop Geocoding will be an add-on to address validation, and there'll be additional pricing that will be determined by volume and processing speeds. The pricing will be public and published soon. Contact SmartyStreets Sales if you have questions regarding enterprise and high-speed options or pricing questions. They'll probably be able to tell you a little bit right now, but those should be released very quickly. There's a wide range of processing speeds. That includes options for over 13,000 records per second, which equates to 50 million records an hour or higher. And we will continue to offer unlimited enterprise options for address validation and also for rooftop geocoding. It's difficult to find vendors right now that will offer rooftop geocoding at unlimited volumes. In the SmartyStreets tradition, this is something we're going to continue to do for our enterprise customers, and we're happy to talk to you about that. There will be options for higher speed and things like that. And as always, the world-class support team from SmartyStreets will continue to support you in your use of the Rooftop Geocoder. They're an organization we're very proud of, and that helps keeps our customer retention very high. If you're ready to get started, what's next? Here, I'm going to leave this up on the screen a little bit while we start to answer some questions.
Yeah, so we've provided that link for you to, if you're saying, I'm on board, I'm ready, what do I do to get started? How do I contact sales? This is the best way to get in touch with sales, is this link. We'll also send out, there will be an email that comes after the webinar that will have this link. And of course, you can just call in, go to our website and call in directly if you'd like to find out more information about US rooftop geocoding. So now we're gonna parse through the questions that we've received and answer some of the ones that have come in. So we're just taking a look. Bear with us while we kind of sort through each one of these.
Okay, so I'm going to answer a few of these. We'll get through as many as we can. We actually had a lot of questions coming in. One question here is, can you speak to how the quality of the SmartyStreets geocoding compares with competitors, and specifically how our geocoding compares to the Google Maps API? Well, I've answered some of this a little bit. The Google Maps API is very good, and many of us, I think, have probably been using it from time to time over the years. I would say that the SmartyStreets geocoding application is going to be, worst case will be as accurate, and in most cases will be more accurate, especially as it compares to multifamily properties or multiple properties within a parcel. For example, with apartments or with mobile home communities or rural addresses, we've seen really a big difference in terms of quality. We've done a lot of comparisons with the Google Maps API, and it just, I would say quite objectively, it does a lot better, especially in some types of properties. Okay, another one here. If we already have a SmartyStreets account and API key, will we need to create a new subscription for the Rooftop API, or this actually be included in the US address API? The Rooftop geocoding accuracy will be extra, so there will be an extra licensing fee to be able to access that, and that you can work that out with your sales rep. Another question here: will the Rooftop geocoding application give unit granularity like in a strip mall? I think we partially answered that. Yes, in many cases it will give unit granularity. It's not 100%, right? So not every multi-unit property like a strip mall or an apartment building or condo complex will always give unit granularity. But I'd say, if I had to just give a broad guess, I'd say about 50% of the time you will get unit granularity. That very, very good question. Thank you. What are the percentages of addresses we have a true rooftop and not a Parcel Centroid? Our early beta testing has shown that we're going to get a true, where we do get a parcel or rooftop level accuracy, we're getting a rooftop level about 80% of the time. I mean, I'm not going to guarantee that, but I'm saying that seems to be what our early nationwide testing has been showing. We're getting where we're getting something better than a zip+4 accuracy, meaning we're getting an actual address. We're getting about 80% rooftop accuracy. Are you handling location points on the z-axis? What a great question, and I anticipated that would be a question, and the answer to that is no, not yet. There are some ways to possibly interpolate elevation, and let me just explain what this question means for those of you who might be new to the concept. The z-axis is the elevation above ground at the building level. So if it's on the first floor, is it, would we give a 10 or a 12 foot or the third floor, say 30 to 40 feet, something like that? No, we're not doing that yet. It's an interesting question. In Japan, which I think probably has the best geocoding source data in the world, they actually make all that data available if you're willing to buy it. You can get X, Y, and Z locations and names of every apartment and unit in the entire country with the latitude, longitude, and elevation. We're not quite there yet, but maybe someday. Interesting question. What are the sources of your data, and how frequent is your abstract validation data is refreshed? The sources of the data are proprietary, but I will say that the majority of our data is coming from thousands upon thousands of locally sourced government entities like cities, municipalities, counties, and others, and sometimes states. And we're blending all these together to get the best address location for every every address point that we can. And the source data, the address validation for those is updated monthly. Does SmartyStreets provide parcel data for a geocode or address? Not yet. It's something that we're considering. It's a great question. Shortly in the future, SmartyStreets will begin offering updated data sets, what we call enrichment data sets, where we'll be offering additional data for each of the addresses that we geocode. Parcel data and the attributes for parcel data, which there's hundreds and hundreds, things like building type or building structure and rooftop structure and number of bedrooms and bathrooms and detached garages and things like that. All of those are available with that type of data. I anticipate that within the next year that we will start offering data such as that. But this first release of the Rooftop Geocoder does not include that level of data. In the mobile home example, there were some pink dots on empty spaces. How does that happen? That's very observant and a very good question. I will answer that. Well, it's in a mobile home community, and mobile homes are mobile. And so it turned out that the imagery date did not appear to match up with the building footprint date or the address date. There's three different data sets. We've got building footprints typically collected by a local municipality or county. We've got imagery data that is collected by Google or Bing or various other companies, and then are matched. And then we've got the address data, which is also collected by various local government authorities. Those don't always match up 100%. And in mobile home communities, they are probably the most pronounced because mobile homes come and go fairly rapidly. So it's just really a data synchronization issue. But as this is for geocoding, if someone gives you that address for where there might be an empty space, you're still going to get the location correctly. Can you send us your slides? These slides will be made available as a recording, and you'll be able to get those. All right, another question here. If an address cannot be rooftop validated and is demoted to the centroid of a parcel, is there a consideration for how close the address is to the boundary line? The more likely it's near or on the line, the lower the confidence. Well, I can tell here we are dealing with someone who has actually done a lot of geocoding and geographic analysis. That's a very good question. Right now it's not. What we're doing right now is if it's a parcel centroid, we are just saying it's a parcel centroid, and we're not giving anything like the area of the parcel or the perimeter of the parcel, anything like that. And I'd say within the database, about 10% of the addresses will be demoted to a parcel centroid, and I think that's actually a really good product suggestion. I'm going to write that one down just to be able to say how far it is from the perimeter of the parcel, or maybe what the area of the parcel would be, to sort of get the maximum threshold of inaccuracy. Great question and a good product suggestion. I will keep that one in mind. One question here is this seems residential focused. Is SmartyStreets a good solution for B2B marketing or list development or business type targeting? This is actually not residential focused. I think maybe many of the examples that I showed today were residential examples, but business addresses actually will have a higher rate of matching than what residences are. They tend to be more, I would say, more postal authorized maybe than residential are. So it is definitely not only focused on residential. Many of our points are in fact very much commercially oriented, and so that's something that you can. And in fact, we'll tell you with the results with SmartyStreets if it's a residential or a business. So there's very, very many business addresses. A lot of questions here. Thank you. Really good questions. Will the SmartyStreets Rooftop Geocoding provide a plugin to Power BI visualization for Power BI dashboards to replace ArcGIS map? No, we don't have that in our plans. We don't have it right now, and we don't have it on our roadmap. However, I will say that our API is very flexible and powerful. Will support just about any existing SDK, and I just would be amazed if you couldn't find a way to integrate it fairly quickly into Power Builder. Or I'm sorry, into Power BI. Okay, the question is, and I'm going to answer about 2 or 3 more, and then we'll call it a day. Are you still using mailing addresses to verify, or are you using legal addresses, i.e., tax assessor data? Well, I would say we're using a combination. So, but the mailing addresses are being used to validate and verify the addresses. A lot of our source data does come from the addresses originally contained in tax assessor data, but they are being validated and verified right now by USPS. On our roadmap for next year, we're going to be expanding our coverage to. There's about 2.5% of valid U.S. addresses, what I call the FedEx or the United Parcel Service addresses, for example, that are located in places like Carmel, California, or gated communities across the country, or little towns like Sinclair, Wyoming, where they're only getting mail delivered via PO box, for example, but they still have legitimate street addresses, which UPS and FedEx deliver packages to. Next year, I'd say in the spring, we are going to be expanding our coverage to include all the non-USPS addresses, many of which can be found in the parcel data. So that's on our roadmap for next year. Great question. All right, I'm just going through here. Are addresses in Puerto Rico supported for the geocoder? Not yet. That's all I will say is whenever you mention Puerto Rico to someone who's doing address validation or geocoding, is they wince and go, oh, Puerto Rico's so hard. We are not yet. We have really great building footprint information for Puerto Rico, and we are currently investigating the viability of doing that. So I will say not yet, hopefully soon, but not right now. We have one more question that I'm going to answer. The question is, for my business, I need to merge 2 data sets through address matching. What would be the best way to use this service and/or address validation service for my business? I think that we've noticed that we have a fair amount of customers who are using the SmartyStreets service traditionally for doing a lot of address blending and address validation. One thing that's really interesting about this question is that there are a lot of sub-parcel addresses which may have be on the same parcel, but will have different street name. For example, we could have a parcel in a downtown area that could have First Street on one side, or First Avenue on one side, and Main Street on the other. And then within that parcel, you would have on one side of the parcel, you would have First Street that would be covered by addresses, and you would have Main Street on the other side of the parcel that would be covered by addresses, and all of those addresses would be part of the same parcel. For address blending operations, there are a lot of companies that would like to know that those 2 addresses were in close proximity to each other or even on the same parcel. I know that in real estate, this is especially important to know all of the addresses that may be part of the same parcel. With the SmartyStreets geocoder, the Rooftop Geocoder, this will be possible in most cases. You'll be able to identify that those addresses are part of the same building or in very, very close proximity to each other, even though they may have different addresses. I would say that in the future, a future roadmap item will be that we will be identifying parcel information and the parcel APN number so that you would be able to identify that those would be in the same parcel. So we're excited about our roadmap and what the potential has for this level of geocoding accuracy. And one of them in the future will be, as part of our enrichment, we'll be offering parcel IDs on the geocodes. That's all for now. Thank you so much for attending today. We've had literally hundreds of attendees. We thank you for your questions, and we thank you for attendance today, and we look forward to hearing from you later. This is my email address. Please feel free to email me or Wes with any questions from today. And you may also contact our SmartyStreets sales or support team through that link at the bottom, smartystreets.com/contact. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will turn it back over to Wes.
Thanks, everybody. We did have quite a few questions, I mean, just a flood of questions. And so we're going to try to, if we can, get to you individually by email. So we'll do our best to parse through those. But again, yeah, just reach out to us. If you want to pose your question directly to Burke at his email address, that's great. We'll try and get to reach out to all of you to get these questions answered. We had a lot of great questions. So thanks again for attending. We're excited about this, and it's evident that you guys are as well through all the questions we've got. So thank you for attending, and have a great day.